Wow,
Hey,
that was
folks,
cool.
we are live right now at 83weeks.com. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. You are listening to 83 Weeks with the WWE Hall of Famer, Eric Bischoff. Eric, how are you, man?
I don't think I could be better, actually. I'm here in Seattle. I flew in from New York yesterday and got here last night, had dinner with my wife and my beautiful daughter who's running in a marathon, her 9th marathon, I might add. And this is the one where she is confident she's going to qualify for the Boston Marathon, which is her next bucket list thing. So Lori and I are here to support our daughter, and we went out and had a great Italian dinner last night, and she's out training right now, and I'm here with you guys.
Well, we're delighted to be with you. I can't wait to unpack what a crazy week it was in the past 7 days for you. And of course, we're going to talk about all of professional wrestling and everything else. We are taking your questions live for Eric right now. So if you want to pick his brain, join in on the conversation, hit us up. We will be recognizing and shouting out those super chats. Eric, I can't believe it took until, unfortunately, Terry Bollea's funeral. That was the first time I met Montana. I feel like I'm like an unofficial Bischoff and you're an unofficial Thompson. And she was the missing piece, but I finally got to meet her. I wish it was under better circumstances, though.
Yeah, as do I, and I'm sure you'll get a chance to meet her again. But Montana's a great. I think of her as my kid, but she's an incredible young woman, very successful in the entertainment business. She was a VP of development at one of the bigger production studios in Los Angeles. She started with Jason Hervey and I as a production assistant and kind of worked her way up, and then went off on her own when she outgrew us, quite frankly, in terms of her capabilities and goals. So I was proud to see her go. And then she woke up one day and said, "You know what? I want to start my own business." So she walked away from a major mid 6-figure job for a young woman in LA. That's a big move, and went off on her own. So I admire her in so many ways. I'm very, very proud of her.
Well, I know the wrestling audience is awfully familiar with Garrett. I'm glad that we're getting to learn a little bit more about Montana, but I'm really excited to hear about this past Saturday. What a weekend it was. Real American Freestyle. Am I calling it right, Eric? Are we going to say RAF 01? Is it 01? What is the correct term for that event now?
Yeah, RAF 01 is in the books, so to speak, and a tremendous event. We're already gearing up. We sent out a press release yesterday. RAF 02 is going to take place in the Mecca of freestyle wrestling, Penn State. So we're really excited about that. When I say freestyle wrestling, amateur wrestling, you call it what you will. There's folk style, there's freestyle, there's whatever. But you will not find a more densely populated wrestling environment. Maybe Iowa. There's some competition between those two. But anyway, we're going to be going to Penn State. It's going to be a great event. We're predicting a sellout. For all you people that just live and die by ticket sales, tell you right now, I'm predicting a sellout. So we're pretty excited about that. We're very excited. Got some great momentum on our part. Very, very excited.
Well, I was excited to see the event. It felt like I was watching, UFC 1. It felt like the ground floor opportunity of a brand new sport. I didn't know what to expect. I know a lot of people didn't know what to expect, but my household loved it. Mom and dad loved it. Megan enjoyed it. I mean, it really felt like a happening. Of course, if you're watching with us on YouTube, you see that photo of Wyatt Hendrickson making his walk to the ring. Man, just absolutely dominating. When I finished the show, I was pretty resolute in the fact that I felt like he is going to be one of your first megastars out of RAF. Tell us about Wyatt Hendrickson, man. What a star.
What a star. What a just powerhouse of a human being. I mean, obviously, as a wrestler, most people, really came to know Wyatt when he won the NCAA heavyweight championship just this past spring and wrapped himself in a flag. Donald Trump came out. And, it was a big moment for Wyatt, who is in the military. And he jumped at the opportunity to be a part of history with Real American Freestyle and put on just a dominant match against his opponent, Mustafa. So it was a great match, but you're right, man. The crowd just reacted to him. He reacted to them. It's everything that we wanted to see for the sport of wrestling, because for so many years, all of these athletes, from the time they're 5, 6, 7 years old, it's the culture of amateur wrestling in America, and it's a good culture, by the way. But it's respect yourself, respect your opponents, respect your team, be humble, grind, let it all out on the mat, keep your mouth shut, be a great citizen. Those are all amazing qualities. And I admire them so much for being so committed to those qualities. On the other hand, we got to make some TV, and we got to see some personalities and energy, and something we don't see necessarily at the Olympics, for example, or the NCAA championships that come around once a year. And we got all of that, man, in Wyatt. He delivered it all. And so did a lot of other guys, man. Real Woods, he's a big deal. Darion Caldwell, although he lost against Real Woods, one of my favorites. He's just got it. And Sarah Hildebrand, same thing. I mean,
oh my gosh, Sarah Hildebrand's going to be one of your biggest stars. I feel like, to use a wrestling analogy, she's going to be like one of your Becky Lynch's. She's going to be a front runner to be one of your top female stars, don't you think? I mean, it feels like we watched the birth of a superstar in Sarah Hildebrand the other night.
We did. I mean, she won a gold medal in the last
Yeah.
Olympics, so she's already at the top in so many ways. But you saw that personality. She came out in a ripped off T-shirt and did the Hulk Hogan thing because she knew, man, we're here to entertain these people. We're not only here to go out there and perform as a world-class athlete at your highest possible level. Yeah, you're there to do that, but you're also there to entertain them. And Sarah got that. I think she thrives in it. And the reaction she got, the reaction she's continuing to get, she'll only be more excited about it next time. Love working with her. Amazing to watch her wrestle. Unbelievable. And she's just a fun person to be around.
I want to mention too, you gave me a heads up that you guys had gotten a curveball from the NCAA. I know you were really excited about promoting Miss Blades. She was going to be, obviously a featured talent on the event. There was an NCAA situation where, some of her eligibility may have been in question. I'm not exactly sure, but I just know that you needed a surprise, and you gave me the heads up, and you said, I may have a Lex Luger type surprise. Of course, we're talking about the very first Nitro. And never in a million years would I have ever guessed that Holly Holm would be stepping into the ranks of amateur wrestling. Yes, the UFC champion who knocked out Ronda Rousey. Yes, the boxing champion more than a dozen times over. You want to talk about a gamer to just say, wrestling sounds fun. Let's go. I love that, dude. Tell me how that came to be.
Well, the late afternoon, I think on Friday, is when I first got word that, and I'm not familiar enough with the NCAA rules and what the issue really was to discuss it in detail, but to kind of paraphrase it all, I guess, evidently it had to do with timing, meaning once her college that she was registered at as a part of the NCAA's, once school officially started, then she was no longer able to compete outside of collegiate wrestling. I think that was it's a small rule necessarily, meaning it's not like something everybody should have just jumped out and recognized right away in terms of the timing. But the NCAA did, and they contacted us and said, look, we love Kennedy. We're excited that she's, participating. However, rules are rules. We can't make exceptions. So Kennedy got pulled, not because of an injury, not because of travel issues, not because she didn't want to wrestle, none of that. She was there ready to go. I love her, by the way. She's one of my favorite people. But we didn't have enough time to contact the NCAA, see if there was a compromise, to see if there was something we could do. It was like, okay, we got to make a decision. Now, one of my partners, there's three of us now, obviously Hulk was one, but Chad Bronstein and Israel Martinez and yours truly are the three partners. Izzy is the guy that he lives in the world of amateur wrestling at a very high level. He's on his way to Croatia for the world tournament coming up, or world championships coming up, I think next week. So he lives in that world, and he's also a trainer. Israel Martinez has trained some of the top collegiate athletes, Olympic level athletes, and ironically, Izzy was Holly's coach for MMA. Izzy is the one that trained her and gave her and trained her in her ground game. And he's known Holly for 15 years.
I see.
So Holly was coming to the event anyway as a guest. We had to get her gear, right? She was coming just to watch and be a celebrity guest and maybe say a few words. And then Izzy went to Holly and said, hey, I know you've never wrestled a match before, because she hadn't. She had never competed in freestyle wrestling once in her life. She trained in it, but had never competed, right? So Izzy went to her and she said, hell yeah, I'll do it. Izzy came to me and he said, okay, I got a surprise for you. It's Holly Holm. I went, wait, what? Because I knew she had a strong MMA background, but never competed in freestyle. So we went with it, and I was like, ooh, wait a minute. This is kind of familiar. Nobody's going to expect Holly Holm to come out. We don't want to just have her come out and go, hey, guess what, everybody? Holly Holm is here. We thought, let's have a little fun with this. I remember when I launched this show back in 1995 called Nitro, the thing that people are still talking about is when Lex Luger came out unannounced. Let's do that. So that's what you got. And it worked really, really well. And she almost won that match. She only lost because she didn't know how to pin. If you go back and watch that match, she manhandled her opponent, or woman-handled her opponent, I guess is a better way to say it, but she did it like she manhandled her and really dominated for the majority of the match, had her on her back at least once, but she didn't know how to shoot a half Nelson. So although she had her opponent completely in control, had her opponent on her back, had she slipped in a half Nelson, that match would have been over. But she didn't, because in Holly's world, you get somebody down like that, you're either going to choke them out or beat them up. And both of those options were off the table at freestyle, right? So she did the best she could, but she almost won that match, her very first match, competitive match, against an incredibly world-class credentialed athlete. It was just awesome.
I want to give Holly some love here. Think about the guts it takes to say, you know what, I'm going to try this for the first time ever on a huge platform where a lot of people are going to see it. And if this grows to be what we all expect it to be, this is going to be an event that lives in legendary status for a long time. Odds are really stacked against me doing well here, but you know what? I'm an athlete. I'm a fighter. Let's go. I'm ready. What a gamer. I thought that was so cool, dude.
It was, in as much as we would have loved to see Holly win, just because of the sheer unique, story that would become. You'd also have your haters out there, because, let's face it, they're out there, right? Everybody would, it must have been a work. That wasn't real. This must be scripted. It's almost like, she was damned if she did and damned if she didn't, right?
Yes.
But she went out there. She almost won it. But the fact that she went out there and did it at such a high level, she's probably got more fans in losing that match than she would have had if she won the match, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. I loved it. I know you will too. Do what I did. Go download the Fox Nation app, sign up. I couldn't believe it's only $7.99 a month. I got this event that in an alternate timeline would have most definitely been a pay-per-view that I would have shelled out 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks for. For under $8, I got it. Go do it right now. Check out Fox Nation. You can grab that replay right now. I think it's really cool, man, that you've got this fertile ground in front of you with Real American Freestyle, and just seeing that some of the positivity that's been piling on online. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, the support you've seen. Were you surprised with the reaction you saw online, Eric?
I don't say surprised, but extremely grateful, maybe borderline relieved and grateful, because it had never been done before. And I think, you always are battling against expectations, right? And I think part of it for me was I was very confident in our ability to produce the show and make it look good on TV. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I've only watched the first 45 minutes on television because I've been literally traveling since last Sunday. I did a Fox News hit Sunday night, got on a plane Monday morning, and I just landed in Seattle last night. So I've been moving constantly, and I haven't had time to really sit down and analyze the show from a production perspective. But I did watch the first 40 minutes. And there's a lot of little things, transitions, tosses to tail of the tape were awkward, and all a bunch of little things that can be easily cleaned up. I think next time I'm going to want to put our announcers, I'm going to somehow find a way that we can position them with a crowd behind them as opposed to just a static graphic. I think that'll kind of create some more energy. Just a lot of little things that I saw in the first 40 minutes that we can tighten up and do much better so the show really pops and moves and flows smoothly as possible. So I was confident in our ability to produce the show despite some of those little changes we're going to make. But I obviously wasn't confident about how the crowd was going to react to it. It's never been done before. What were the expectations of the live audience? Could we deliver on those expectations? Took about 45 seconds to figure that out, and mostly grateful. This whole thing is nothing but a blessing from the Lord. That's what this is. This opportunity on my lap right now has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with the blessing that it is and the people I get to work with. As confident as I was in many aspects, I was nervous about how it would get responded to, but the audience responded. And I want a special shout out to Gavin at Fox Nation. Took a big chance on us. Most people would not have taken that risk. They would have taken a wait and see approach after we put the show out on YouTube a couple times, and all that. But, Chad Bronstein did a great job. I think Fox had a fair amount of confidence in my ability to pull the show off, and they saw the potential. And I want to thank everybody that's subscribed to Fox Nation and encourage you, if you haven't seen Real American Freestyle, go now. Support Fox Nation because they supported us. They're supporting amateur wrestling. They're supporting now Real American Freestyle, real professional wrestling. And let's show them some love too, man. I appreciate that.
Hey, I want to ask you, I think everybody wants to know, and I don't know what you can or can't share. So I get if you have to be cagey right now, but are you getting any viewership figures from Fox Nation? Were they happy with how the debut performed? Like, are you getting positive feedback from a corporate level, I guess is what I'm trying to dig at.
Yeah, so let me spend some time talking about that. I left Cleveland Monday morning thinking I was going to spend the week at home because I'd been on the road for a week. And on the way home, I got a text asking me to turn around and head back to New York for a meeting on Thursday. So I got home, got to empty out my bag and my suitcase and repack it with some fresh stuff, leave the next morning, fly back to New York because they wanted to have a discussion about our future. And I knew it was going to be good because I had heard from the president of Fox that night, Laura Patterson. She actually came to the event with her family. It was awesome. She sat right at ringside, had a great time. And I could tell by watching her, she was really into it. Her son was really into it. Her son's an amateur wrestler. He was running up and getting everybody's autograph during the matches. So I'm thinking, this is not bad. Not bad. It's the first time I ever had a network executive at that level come up to me on an introduction and just hug me. I went, I think we're good. This is going to be fun. But I went back to New York with Chad, obviously, and I didn't get any data that I can share in terms of viewership. Evidently, that is strictly guarded information that is not disseminated outside of the research department at Fox. But here's what I can tell you. In terms of subscriptions, we exceeded expectations.
Okay.
Substantially. Like in a really cool way. And I won't give you the data or the comparisons because that would probably be inappropriate of me. But there was a reason they wanted to meet us on Thursday to discuss our future. They're very, very happy with us. They see the big picture. They see what freestyle wrestling on a professional level can be. They recognize that Real American Freestyle is an emerging new sports league, and to be able for them to be in on the ground floor or any other network or streaming platform is a major opportunity. And I could not be more excited about our relationship with Fox and Fox Nation.
My gosh, that's great news, dude. Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. I do want to hit a few more questions about Real American Freestyle. If you're curious, yes, we will be talking about pro wrestling after our first commercial break. We will get there, but this is a big weekend and there was a lot going on. I was shocked to see how amazing Chael Sonnen was. I've known he was the most hugely entertaining UFC fighter in all time, at least in my opinion. I know he drew from pro wrestling inspiration in some of those promos. I know he's a fantastic talking head on social media and on his podcast and his YouTube platform. But I thought he was absolutely terrific. Little did I know that Tito Ortiz was maybe hypothetically going to have a cocktail or two and throw down a challenge. Is this real, Eric? Are we going to see Tito Ortiz and Chael Sonnen at RAF02?
I mean, that thing just happened. It was not planned. It wasn't in the format. Shortly before the final match, like 10 minutes before, Tito came to me and said, "Hey, man, I want to make a challenge to Chael." I said, "Absolutely not. We're not going to blindside Chael. That's not going to happen." And somebody got to Chael and said, "Hey, you up for this?" And Chael was up for it. So once I got the word that Chael was okay with the challenge, I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew it was going to be a challenge. So against all better judgment, quite frankly, and when I say that, not because I like Tito, I on a personal level, Tito and I are cool. Really look up to him in a lot of ways. He's doing a lot of good things down in Florida. He's coaching, kids. He's part of the community. He's doing a lot of good things. But, I wasn't ready for him to come out and challenge Chael on a Real American Freestyle event, right? He challenged him to wrestle a Real American Freestyle, I think. That was a little awkward, and we're not going to do that kind of stuff again. But I listened to Chael just I saw him on Instagram on an interview with a guy by the name of Christian Piles over at Flow Wrestling, FLO. Check him out. And Chael was like, "Yeah, we're going to do it. Let's just make sure this is it. We're going to bury the hatchet. I don't want to be walking around," I'm paraphrasing. "I don't want to be walking around with this, issue between us for another 30 years, man. If we're going to do it, let's agree that this is it." So when I heard that, I went, damn, this might actually happen. So we'll see. Time will tell. It's really up to Chael and Tito if they really want to do it. And, I know what people are going to say, but you know what? Chael Sonnen is a stud.
Yeah.
And if he's confident, Tito's confident, they might not be out there competing, on a regular basis, but I wouldn't discount either one of them, man. I think it'd be a hell of a match. It'd be fun to watch. And maybe, just maybe, they'll settle their beef after all these years.
Well, I'm excited about it. I know they hooked up once upon a time in Bellator, but that was not without controversy. I know Tito won with a choke, but I think under the confines of wrestling and only wrestling, not all the other MMA stuff, but strictly wrestling, I think Tito's in trouble.
Chael is I think he was part of the national Greco-Roman wrestling team. That's all upper body locks and throws.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chael Sonnen gets a hold of you, you're going to go for a ride. I don't know. I'd kind of like to see that match. I'm talking myself into being excited about it, but it'd be pretty cool. And Tito's a legend, man. Tito's fun to watch, so could be cool.
We got lots of live questions coming in. Let's hit some of those. Little Jimmy Sorensen, friend of the show, says, "What was the most exciting part of Real American Freestyle to you?" What was the most exciting part last weekend, Eric?
I think the Evan Wick match. I really got excited about that match because, as I said earlier, one of my concerns was, are we going to be able to present amateur wrestling in a visually dynamic way that's really going to get the sport over, get people excited about the sport of freestyle wrestling? And because sometimes, you watch wrestling in the NCAA finals, for example, or even in the Olympics, it's pretty conservative, right? You got to be a real fan to keep focused on it because it's chess, right? It's physical chess. And sometimes that's less than dynamic to watch, right? It's not eye-catching unless you're a super fan. But Evan Wick went out there, man. He's throwing people around. They're up in the sky. They're upside down. They're inside out. It was definitely the best match of the night, the best performance of the night, as well as the best match. So that's the one that really got me excited. Sarah got me super fired up. I think Sarah actually is the one that got me most excited just because she brought so much energy before she touched the mat. I mean, that made me that brought a big smile to my face. So it's hard to say, but I'd say one of those two moments.
We got some other live questions here about Real American Freestyle we should hit. Adam Clemens is with us here, and he wants to know, Eric, is there any chance we'll see Gable Steveson join Real American Freestyle? He'd love to see that Hendrickson-Stevenson rematch. I think they're tied at 1 apiece. Will we get a rubber match, you think, in RAF?
I think there's a likelihood that we will. We were talking to Gable initially about coming on board, and Gable was still deciding what he wanted to do with MMA. So he obviously made the decision he made, but we're still in contact and we're still in discussions, and let's hope. I think that would be a great matchup. That's not something that I'd want to do right away. I'd want to build up to that match. It's really Israel Martinez. That's really his area, and I would let him, decide what the best way to approach this is. But from a television point of view and a promoter's point of view, I'd love to have a couple months to build up to that, because it would be a massive, massive draw. Not only, in the world of wrestling, amateur wrestling, but way outside of it. I think it would be a really good marquee matchup to have.
Adam Clemens says, I'm hoping the weekly RAF TV show will provide more time to showcase the wrestlers' personalities. That's an interesting idea. Do you think there is a version of Real American Freestyle where it does have weekly TV one day, Eric?
I can not only imagine it, we're executing on that vision as we speak. I just did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter and talked in depth about the plans for our weekly show. And yeah, we are going to go out with a live weekly RAF series, Real American Freestyle series. It won't be, if you look at what we did Saturday as our version of a PLE, right, or pay-per-view, if you will, that's our big show, right? We'll just use WWE as an example. This is our monthly PLE. We are going to have my goal, my plan. It's not even a goal, it's a plan. You have a goal, you execute a plan. I'm executing the plan to launch a 2-hour, most likely 2 hours, a 2-hour live Real American Freestyle that we're going to tour 52 weeks a year, every week. We'll be in smaller venues, probably the larger casinos that have television capabilities and things like that. But we will be, and the athletes that'll be competing, all high-level athletes, not the world class level athletes, Olympic champions and former world champions and that, but the guys and gals that are coming up, and they'll be competing on the weekly shows for an opportunity to get a match with one of the big stars that are on our monthly PLE. So that's the basic format. We hope to be, my goal is to have it on the air by the end of first quarter, at the latest, at the end of first quarter. And we're already making moves to make that happen. We're exploring, again, aggressively, all the approvals necessary for us to allow gambling on our live shows, because these shows are going to tour in casinos, like I said, all over the country that have TV capabilities, and there's a lot of them. But we're also going to bring the gambling aspect to it for the people that are there that want to gamble live or on their phones, for that matter. So you could find Real American Freestyle on DraftKings before you know it.
Oh man, I can't wait for that. We're getting lots of questions about location. Like Uncle Daddy, he wants to know, Eric, we're watching anxiously here in the South Pacific. Any chance we could bring this style of wrestling to the South Pacific? Is it only going to tour in America? And I did see some comments asking, hey, how can I watch the event in Canada? Does Fox Nation have global capabilities, or?
No, they're geo-blocked, and I've been getting a lot of those questions myself, Conrad, and unfortunately I haven't been able to respond to all of them. But right now, distribution is exclusively on Fox Nation, only in the U.S. Now, we own the international rights to Real American Freestyle for broadcast, meaning Fox Nation has nothing to do with that. So in fact, I was on the phone this morning with 2 prospective agents who work in Los Angeles with one of the big agencies that have a plan for us to take our broadcasts out internationally. So eventually, yes, you will have access to Real American Freestyle, but currently it's only on the Fox Nation app, or platform. However, we're talking about, I talked to Ant Evans, our YouTube Sherpa Guidesman, who you were so kind in introducing me to originally. Ant is also he's in control of our YouTube channel and helping us build that. And Ant and I talked about maybe releasing, one match a week or one match every couple of days, because it's a 3.5 hour show, right? But we want people to see it and expose it internationally. So we're thinking about releasing it almost on a match by match basis. And we'll have more information on that once we figure it out.
Stay tuned. I can't wait to learn what's next for Real American Freestyle. I want to hit one more question before we move on to professional wrestling. Joe Walker Jr.
That's weird, right? We just got them talking about real professional wrestling. Now we're talking about another professional wrestling. It's just weird.
Joe Walker Jr. has a question that sort of combines both of those. He wants to know, any chance we see someone like Shayna Baszler on Real American Freestyle following Holly Holm's appearance? That's interesting. We know she's got an MMA background. We know she's got a pro wrestling background. And I think, maybe through a stroke of luck, a lot of the UFC contracts do allow some of their contracted talent, not saying that Shayna is necessarily one of those right now, but they are allowed to participate in grappling competition, which I think this would qualify as.
Sure.
Do you think we'll see Shayna Baszler or perhaps other UFC stars? Like, I think Bo Nickel is under contract to UFC. So it feels like there is an opportunity for crossover for both UFC and sports entertainment. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it is fair. In fact, we as a company and as a league, now I can say that we're a league. We're not just a company. But as a sports league, having somebody like Bo Nickel, who is such a high-profile current fighter, in fact, I think he's got a fight November 15th in the UFC, right? So for Bo Nickel, for example, to become our very first world champion in his weight division, and then, 6 weeks later be competing, at the UFC, that's good for us. It's good for UFC. It's good for Bo. It's good for the sport, because it helps people realize that, there's this relatively new thing in many people's lives called freestyle wrestling, but freestyle wrestling is such a major, major cornerstone of MMA. You look at all of the top fighters in the MMA, and they all come from essentially a wrestling background. Arguably, jiu-jitsu came from the wrestling sport, the sport of wrestling. And certainly, guys like Bo Nickel are proving it out. But, John Jones, another, amateur wrestler turned, legend, for that matter, in the UFC. So to see, guys like Bo Nickel, and, if Shayna were to come along, if she's interested, if she's got, freestyle wrestling, competition and experience, and she wants to pull a Holly Holm kind of situation, or just sign and get promoted, I think it would be awesome. Anytime there's crossover between MMA and what we do, I think both companies and the athletes themselves benefit from it highly, and it certainly helps Real American Freestyle.
Well, we all loved RAF 01. I hope you'll check it out on Fox Nation. As a reminder, it was only $7.99 for me to sign up and see the first event. I highly recommend it. You're going to get more than your money's worth. I'm even seeing in the live chat here that we have some veterans who are watching this right now, and they got Real American Freestyle for free. They were able to sign up and get, because of their prior service history, a hookup from Fox Nation. So go check that out. The Fox Nation app is available in the Apple App Store. That's where I found it. And $7.99, what a value. And speaking of value, we're overdue to talk about our friends at MANDO. What a fabulous product this is. I actually have it sitting right here in front of me. I mean, here's the reality. Fall is here, guys. We're going to have to get outside and start working on those leaves. We've got football season, maybe some hunting trips, but staying fresh can be a challenge. And that's why you need to hear about MANDO deodorant. From your pits to, well, everything else, MANDO high-performance odor control and sweat control actually lasts all day. Forget those colognes that just mask the stink. MANDO blocks odor before it even starts. It's one stick that does two jobs. That's double coverage for double overtime games, that weekend project, and all those extra long pre-holiday shifts. You're good. It's not magic. It's science, because we're talking about the clinical strength sweat control. One swipe and you're good. We're not talking about your typical deodorant. This is clinical strength. It's twice as strong and twice as likely to control sweat. How about this? It controls sweat and odor for 72 hours. And after just 12 hours, underarm sweat was reduced by 92%. Not just that, this is deodorant that's been re-engineered to stop odor before it even starts. It doesn't just mask it, it prevents it. and they're putting their money where their mouth is. 100% of the study participants experienced all-day odor protection with MANDO. And that's because MANDO isn't loaded with chemicals. MANDO only uses premium ingredients. We're talking gentle mandelic acid. What it does is it keeps you free of stink. It keeps you fresh and dry. We're talking double protection for both odor and sweat. Go check it out right now. It's the Sweat Control Solid Stick. It gives you the double protection you need. And MANDO Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. You'll get that solid stick deodorant. You'll get some cream tube deodorant for everywhere else. And you get 2 free products like mini body wash or deodorant wipes. Plus, you get free shipping. And right now is a special offer for our listeners. New customers can get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Just use the code 83weeks at shopmando.com. You'll get 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Eric, the questions are continuing to roll in here about Real American Freestyle. And here's an interesting question from Acel Raider. Probably butchered that name. Eric, who are your top 5 toughest women in a real fight? Also, did you get my apology? It's Ask a Bum. I don't know what his apology was about.
Oh, no, I'm so glad. I'm so glad, Ask a Bum. Thank you so much. I was really impressed with your letter and fully intended to respond. Got a little busy right after I received your letter. Do not worry about it, brother. I know it came from a good place. It came from passion and respect. That's how I took it. No need to apologize, but very impressed with your reach out. And 5 toughest women in a street fight. Geez, I don't know. I don't think I'd want to mess with Holly Holm after what I saw.
Yeah, no doubt.
I wouldn't have wanted to mess with her anyway because, I saw her take Ronda Rousey's soul. She literally took her soul. And Ronda's been a shell of her former self ever since. So I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that. But after watching her wrestle, I figured I could stay away from her fists. I'd try, at least for a while. I'd probably be all right. But the way she wrestles, there's just no stopping her. So no, I wouldn't want to tangle with her. Any of the, women that were on our card would be a really bad choice to get physical with, unless but I don't know, man. Beyond that, I guess I'm not as familiar with badass women as I should be, because it would be good to know who not to mess with.
I love you for that.
But yeah, I just put Holly at the top of the list and have to do a little research, which I should do because I'm capable of saying some stupid shit.
I just think it was, you want to talk about guts? I mean, I almost wanted to say the balls it took, but since it's Holly, I'm like, okay, the guts it took just to be like, you know what? I know I've never done this before, but I'll do it in front of a live audience and a massive audience and a historic event. And yeah, let's go. Why not? You want to talk about somebody who is comfortable.
That's a warrior. That's a warrior right there.
Yes, I love it. Listen, let's talk about yesterday. This is a huge day, and I know that it was a big day for you because of everything that was going on in New York, but it wasn't lost on me that when you're in New York having these conversations about what you called the most exciting opportunity of your life to Justin Barrasso earlier in the week, it was also the exact 30-year anniversary of the debut of Monday Nitro. How wild is that, dude?
I didn't even realize it till you texted me. I went, oh, wow. That's right. And what I said to you earlier, I look at this opportunity as a blessing. There are so many reasons why I'm convinced that it is. And they're all little things like that. It's just, I told this to Lori about a month ago. It's like everything I've ever done in my life has led me to this opportunity, to be ready for the preparation on a personal level, on a physical level. I've been working out pretty hard for about a year. I'm really grateful for that because I can keep up with 30-year-old people. In fact, I can work most of them into the dirt, except for Chad and Izzy. Those two guys go. But I'm But, you know, just everything I've done, all the experiences, good and bad, all led me to this moment and opportunity. And the fact that yesterday, while I'm sitting in a meeting that I didn't even know was going to happen last week with the head of the network and our television partner talking about our future in such a positive way, that others call that irony, I just call it a nod. Just supposed to happen. That's how I feel about it. It is supposed to happen.
I mean, let's not forget, how was the whole idea for Nitro born? I mean, I know you've told us the story a million times, but give us the Cliff Notes version again, like how Nitro was created.
Out of fear, I went to a meeting with Ted Turner to talk about international distribution in China and an opportunity to do a major deal with Star Television, which was owned by Rupert Murdoch at the time, probably still is. Rupert and Ted were like, yeah, this all the time. So I had to go ask for permission because, you know, I couldn't just go do that deal without risk of ramifications from Ted because it was very personal. The competition between Ted and Rupert Murdoch was very real and very personal. So I prepped for that meeting like a good boy should, and went to that meeting to pitch my ass off. And, you know, 30 seconds in, I got, oh, what's it going to take to be competitive? You know the rest of the story. I walked out of that meeting kind of numb and somewhat overwhelmed. That's mild. Got to my office, locked myself in a room and said, okay, now what? You didn't ask for this, you didn't vote for this, but you're going to do this and you're either going to succeed or fail. So I locked myself in a room and said, okay, how can I do it? I can't beat the WWE. They're too good at what they do. If I go compete with their model against them, I'm going to get killed eventually, sooner than later, probably. I didn't want to be a distant number two because we'd already been that. I had to be competitive. And I thought the best way to do it would be to be as different as the WWE as possible, starting with they're live, then they're taped, then they're live, then they're taped. Screw it, I'm going to go live every single week. Because I knew back then, live television always performs better than tape television. It just is what it is. So, okay, I'm going to go live. They're focused on teens and preteens. I can't beat them at that. I'm not even going to try to beat them at that, but they're ignoring 18 to 49-year-old men. So I'm going to shift the presentation of my programming to appeal to 18 to 49-year-olds more than what we've been currently doing, which is imitating WWE's teen and preteen architecture. I'm going to shift that architecture from teen and preteen over to 18 to 49. I'm going to go live. Oh, and I'm going to throw some reality-based storylines in there, let wrestlers use their real names, take real-life situations and blow them up into fiction. All of that was my goal, to attract that 18 to 49-year-old audience. That's how Nitro became Nitro.
It's fascinating to me, just the thinking of, because I think a lot of people would say, hey, I want to avoid competition. What was it do you think about Ted that made him say, no, let's go right into it. Let's go heads up with them. I ask because sometimes we've heard, like, you know, there'll be a Home Depot and then right next to it, they'll build a Lowe's, or there's a gas station and they'll build another one right across the street. And I know there's a lot of theories about that, but I'm sure Ted had one of his own, right?
I don't know what his theory was. I didn't question him. I just left the room and went, oh man, what am I going to do now? But look, if you go back and you look at Ted Turner's history as a businessman, he took big risks. Ted was the last of the real entrepreneurs in television, right? One of the last. Certainly Fox's, Rupert Murdoch's, and the Murdoch family are right there too. But Ted was a visionary. Ted was a competitor. Above all else, as brilliant as Ted was really like, in my opinion, at least, he was like the media version of Elon Musk. He saw things that other people didn't see. He believed things could be achieved that most people would not even spend time talking about. And he took big risks. But I think, you know, Ted always believed, based on what I've read, not in the conversation with Ted, but what I've read about Ted in his biographies, for example, is that he believed in the loyalty of the wrestling audience. He knew that audience would always be there, and that he could use that audience to promote other programming too. So it was an anchor audience that Ted knew that he could depend on, and it didn't cost him as much as buying movie libraries and syndicating shows and things like that. And you could own it. And Ted believed strongly in owning. Look, Ted's vision was create the content, own that, own the distribution of the content, and own the library that you're building with it. And wrestling provided a perfect opportunity for that. Now, in terms of going head to head, I think that's just the competitive nature of Ted. Ted liked to fight. Ted was very confrontational. He was strategic, and he believed in great. He was a student of great battles in history. He understood the art of war as it applies to business. And I think that was probably just his instinct, because it was such a strong part of who Ted Turner was.
I want to ask you about that first Nitro. We know that it happened in the Mall of America, and I know we've touched on this before, but why the Mall of America? Why did you think that was necessary, and why that date? As a reminder, September 4th, I believe, was a holiday, and I think Raw was preempted. Was that the rationale? You knew they wouldn't be on, so you wanted to give them a chance to sample your wares? And if that's how you land on the date, how do you land on the location of the Mall of America?
Absolutely the reason for the date, because we could have picked any date we wanted to, but knowing that WWF Monday Night Raw at that time, I think it was preempted for the dog show.
That's right.
Might have been another show, but it was a special on USA. It was advertised, we knew, a year in advance or whatever. So it was like, wow, if there's an opportunity to get their audience to sample our show, it's on that night. And that's all we were hoping for, just sample us. It's the best you can hope for. Didn't expect to be, to break any records, but we did. And the audience did sample us. And we were competitive from that point forward. A lot of people go, oh, Nitro only got hot because of the NWO. You're an idiot. If you go back and you look at the ratings for Nitro from day one all the way up into July of 96, we'd win 2, they'd win 2. We'd win 1, they'd win 2. We'd win 3, they'd win 1. We'd win 1, they'd win 1. There was a lot of back and forth, but we were competitive immediately in a head-to-head environment. Now, clearly in 96, with the NWO and all the drama and the interest that created, then we just walked away with it. But we were competitive from the very, very beginning. And I'm kind of proud of that. And I think the September 4th show set the tone. It was like, okay, here we are, and here's how we're going to be different than what you're used to, because we believe in surprises. We don't believe that we have to promote every single freaking thing you're doing, because by the time it gets there, the audience has already made up their mind whether they like it or not. Let's create a must-see TV environment and psychology by doing big things that we don't tell them about in advance, because that creates the sense in the viewer that, well, I can't afford to miss the show because they're going to pull some rabbit out of their hat. I don't want to miss that. That was the psychology in developing the format that became Nitro, is to create as many of those moments that subconsciously could communicate to the viewer that, look, this is live TV and we do some crazy shit here that you're not going to expect. So number one, don't leave. And number two, don't miss it, whatever you do. And it worked.
Want to give a shout out. We've got people in the live chat right now watching from Turkey and from Portugal. We got an international flair on this Friday afternoon. Thank you for being here with us. Keep those questions coming. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live. We know, Eric, you were able to pull off a major surprise on that first Nitro. And I know you've indicated before you did market research heading into it, and that's how you started to develop the SARSA formula. And obviously one of the biggest surprises in the history of the Monday Night Wars was the very first episode of Nitro. Lex Luger showed up, and he was there having worked a WWF house show the night before. So I don't know how much time we've spent talking about this. I'm sure it's been years, but you had to have some legal conversations to just verify, are we sure we can do this? I mean, when were you positive that you had Lex Luger appearing on the show? Was that a week before, the day of, the night before? How quickly and when does all that come together and you realize, oof, we've got a special surprise now?
No, I knew legally we were fine early on. There was no question about that, because I had the contract sitting right in front of me, right? Or lawyers did. I didn't have the contract, but I was assured by my lawyers over at Turner Broadcasting that absolutely free and clear, no problem there. And I had every confidence. Once I got to that point, once I made the decision to bring Lex in and we talked through how we were going to do it, he was comfortable with it and excited about it. Once I got the green light from the attorneys, which would have probably it probably took place 3 or 4 weeks before the actual appearance, I was 100% confident that it was going to. I wasn't 100% confident in how people were going to react. It was never been done before, so I was hopeful, but I was confident he was going to show up and we were going to execute probably.
Hypothetically, let's just go down this hypothetical train, and I know we're sort of fantasy booking, but not really. If you wouldn't have been able to put together the Lex Luger deal, did you have another idea up your sleeve? Would it have been a different match? Would it have been a different debut? Because I know on that show, we certainly tease him and Luger at the end, and we even ran a promo hyping up the debut. Next week, we're going to see Sabu for the first time. And I'm not saying that he was necessarily for the masses, but did you have a plan B? Like, I know when Hogan turned, if he didn't turn, the backup plan, and thankfully it worked out, was going to be Sting. Was there a backup plan for Luger at all?
Nope. I mean, it was a bit of a different situation. I was 100% confident that Lex was committed. He was excited. There was no, Lex didn't have a reputation, at least with me, of kind of being indecisive and changing his perspective on things. Hulk did. Hulk was tough. You could be all in on a Monday, and then Thursday you're going to get a call because now he's had time to think about it and see how it plays out, 3 weeks after the fact. Hulk was very good about, okay, this sounds fun, but what's next? Where does it go from here, right? In fact, that's one of the things that, when I saw him communicating with Vince Russo, and Vince Russo would pitch Hulk a really big idea, and Hulk would stroke his Fu Manchu and go, okay, well, where does it go from there? And that's when it was like deer in the headlights. Fuck, I don't know. Yo, bro. That's just the way Hulk was. It wasn't, that sounds like fun and a great idea, but where's the business go afterwards? And if you could solve that, if you could answer that question in your own mind and convince him, he was solid as a rock. But if there was any doubt about where it's going in the future, he could talk himself out of something that he previously had been talked into. And I knew that. That's why the plan B, for Sting and for Hulk, had he not, executed in July. I didn't have that same concern with Lex. I knew Lex was committed, barring something unforeseen, like, plane delays or, he'd be taken hostage or something. I knew he was going to be there and I wasn't concerned about it. So there was no plan B.
I guess I meant in terms of if legal from Turner had said, we might need to wait this one out.
I don't know who it would have been. I would have known, because the idea of focusing so much on the surprise, and the reason that we went to the extreme that we did to keep it a surprise, meaning Lex bought his own airplane ticket.
Wow.
Lex booked his own hotel, because I didn't want his travel to go through the corporate system, because somebody would have said, oh, Lex Luger's back. There it goes, right?
Yep.
So Lex bought his own plane ticket. He booked his own hotel room. He got himself over to the Mall of America. He snuck in the back door. We had security meet him to go hide him in a restroom that we blocked off from the public. So I did all that because I knew the value of surprise, but knowing the value of surprise, that element for me came out of the extensive research that we did all over the United States prior to launching and creating the format that I created for Nitro. Just listening to a diverse group of wrestling fans talking about the things they love about wrestling and the things that they don't like about wrestling, and finding those things that I could exploit in a positive way and build into my formula on a consistent basis. And the element of surprise was like the number one thing across the board that wrestling fans talked about why they like professional wrestling over other forms of entertainment. So it had not, if legal would have come to me and said, "Oh, can't do it," they're countersuitors, whatever, I would have had to come up with another one. I just don't know what it would have been, but I would have.
Michael's with us here live, and he wants to know, when you decided to run the first Nitro live from the Mall of America, what was your biggest fear that night? You know, we talked about the Mall of America a minute ago, but it's a unique location. Certainly visually, it looks cool. I know Silva was flashing some pictures up on YouTube for us a minute ago, but I mean, it is an out there decision to make. Did you have any fears about running in a mall?
Look, yes and no. From a production point of view, you know, David Crockett had gone out, did a site survey. We knew that from a physical production point of view, no problem. I was excited about, and you asked that question earlier and I failed to answer it. So Mall of America, when it was built, you know, being from Minneapolis, not from there, but having lived in Minneapolis for 25 years, the Mall of America was like the largest mall in the world, and it was being celebrated. It was a destination. It was like a little Universal Studios, you know, in the middle of Minnesota somewhere. Not in the middle, but you know what I mean. So it had been in the news so much, and it had become a destination that I thought, okay, it's got its own brand. You know, it's not Disney MGM Studios, but the Mall of America was, at least in the public eye, was kind of a big damn deal. So I thought, okay, it's got that going for it. Minnesota's always been pretty good for wrestling, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to get an audience there. And if worse comes to worse, that's going to be a mall full of people that are going to just stop and watch and go, what the hell's going on? And my biggest concern is always, it's no different than Real American Freestyle. My biggest concern wasn't my ability to produce the show, certainly not Izzy's ability to get some of the greatest athletes in the world to go out there and put on a great match. That wasn't my concern. My concern was, is anybody going to show up? This is a new sport being promoted in a completely different way. We're not part of the NCAA system. We're not the Olympics. Are people really going to show up and support it? And we had over I think it was like 42 or 4,400 people that were rabid freestyle wrestling fans. So with Mall of America, you hope you're going to draw a crowd, you promote, and you pray that people are going to show up and be interested, but you don't know until they do. And that was my biggest concern. But here's the other part. I knew I was comfortable with the risk because I knew if I could get people to show up, the look would be freaking phenomenal. I wouldn't need 5,000 people to make it look cool for TV. It looked like Fight Club meets the Mall of America. You know, you had the ring down in the center of the floor, in the center of the atrium, and you know, your structure was built so you're 360 degrees surrounded by people standing all the way up to the top of the building or the top floor. It just looked cool on television, and I thought, you know, it's worth the risk. If I can get people to show up, this will look really freaking cool on television. And it does. Look at it. I mean, it looks like a Roman Coliseum, a modern day version of it. It was awesome.
It is a classic shot to see the very first Monday Nitro at the Mall of America, and it did look cool. And if you're looking to look cool, look no further than True Classic. You see, at True Classic, it's never just about the fit or the fabric. It's about helping guys show up with confidence and purpose every single day. Their clothes fit where they should. They feel incredible, and they don't cost a fortune. You get that tailored look without sacrificing comfort or blowing your budget. But what really, truly sets True Classic apart is the mission behind it all. From uplifting men in their day-to-day lives to giving back to underserved communities, and yes, even making you laugh at ads that maybe don't take themselves too seriously. True Classic is a brand that leads with purpose. I've been rocking True Classic for a while now. You can literally feel the difference the minute you throw one on. It's tailored where you want it, relaxed where you need it. No bunching, no stiff fabric, no BS. Just clean, effortless fits that actually work for real life. So forget the overpriced designer brands and skip the cheap throwaway stuff. True Classic is built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can find True Classic at Target, Costco, or head on over right now to trueclassic.com/83weeks to try them out for yourself. It really helps the show, and you're going to love the way you feel. You're going to love the way True Classic feels at trueclassic.com/83 weeks. Eric, we're live, and we've got a live studio audience right now on YouTube at 83weeks.com. And sort of proving your point, 70% of the folks who are here with us who voted in the poll say that Lex's appearance was the best part of the very first Nitro, according to our poll. And I've always been curious, we started with a 1-hour show, but eventually it expanded to a 2-hour show. When you first launched Nitro, did you have any benchmarks that you needed to hit in order to get that second hour? I know it comes around in the spring of 96, but does that not even come up until later, or did you already have that in your mind's eye when you first started?
No, I did not. No, that was, based on the success of the 1 hour, because we started out as hot as we did and continued to build the audience. I think once Brad Siegel and Ted, Scott Sass, I'm sure, once they saw that, wow, this is real and it's actually working, let's just give them an additional hour, because the cost of doing a 1 hour show is really no more than doing a 2 hour show. There's a substantial economy of scale there. If you can hold on to it, and that's a big thing. Back in my day, you establish your audience, and then your goal is to build audience all the way up until your main event. If you fail to build your audience throughout the show, that's a failure from a production point of view, from a television producer's point of view, a programming point of view. As an ad sales executive, you don't want a show that starts at one level and continually deteriorates throughout the 1 hour, or in this case, 2 hour period. You can't sell that shit. So our goal was start here and build to the very end. I was confident we could do that in a 1 hour format. I never even thought about 2 hours until I get a phone call from Brad Siegel saying, hey, guess what? Starting on this date, your show's now going to be 2 hours. From a business perspective, I understood exactly what he was doing and why he was doing it. Because again, economy of scale, he's getting higher rated programming that he can sell in the marketplace on Nitro than he possibly could get on a movie or a syndicated sitcom, for example. So it made financial sense. For us at WCW, it was a little overwhelming initially. So, oh my God, we were so used to 1 hour formats that a 2 hour was like, oh, that's going to be tough at the level that we were competing at, right? If we would have just been on TBS, probably would have been no big deal if we weren't in a head-to-head environment. But to be on the TNT network in prime time, competing with WWE, that was a bigger challenge to go 2 hours. And we did it, and we were successful, and it continued to grow all the way to the point that somebody went, hey, Eric, guess what? We're doing 3 hours for the same reasons. But it puts a lot of creative pressure on the team for sure.
We are live, and we're looking for your questions for Eric Bischoff. I see Heater One, Blackbird One is here live, and they say, get the ads off of here, please. As a reminder, adfreeshows.com is your hookup where you can enjoy all of this content without commercials. And over the next week or so, Eric's going to be going live again at adfreeshows.com with a Zoom. He can see you, you can see him. You can ask Eric any questions you'd like. So if you'd like to enjoy this experience sans ads, you can do that on Patreon over at adfreeshows.com. We wanted to celebrate Nitro, Eric. I can't believe it's been 30 years by asking you, what were your top 5 WCW Monday Night Nitro moments? And I thought, hey, what better way to celebrate Nitro than to ask you your top 5 moments? And we want to hear from you guys right now live on YouTube. What were some of your top 5 Nitro moments? We'll start with your number 5, Eric. When Diamond Dallas Page disguised himself as La Parka. This was a major surprise. I remember losing my mind as a young fan when I saw this. He's knee deep in his feud with Randy Savage in 1997. La Parka was one of my favorite luchadors. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, did La Parka just hit a diamond cutter? Bang! Here's the big reveal. I loved it as a fan, but why was this one in your top 5 and so special to you, Eric?
Because I think for me, now DDP will have a different perspective because, he lived it and I didn't. But for me as a producer, it was like, it wasn't the peak, certainly, of Page's success, but he was sure on his way. And I think it was the moment, in combination with a lot of other things, but it was the real pivot point for Page to go from stardom to superstardom. And it's the magnitude of how that moment catapulted DDP into the level that he ultimately became. It was an important moment, and it was so well executed. You know, even in the shot that Super Dave just put up, you look at that crowd. They're behind the finish. They got the diamond cutter up. They're all on their feet. And when you can create that much energy and reaction as a television producer, and I'm certain as a performer, it's a real sweet moment, man. And that was one of my favorites.
What a magical moment it was. I know it's got to be on DDP's short list too. But when we're asking you about your top 5 Monday Nitro moments, and again, we're live on YouTube. We want to hear your top 5 below. The number 4 moment that you picked was the genesis of Crow Sting. So to set the backstory, the NWO has become a thing when Hulk Hogan joins the Outsiders in July. And then we've got the August pay-per-view where the NWO is now in control of the big gold belt and they spray paint the world title. By September, well, that's the month for War Games. It's going to be WCW versus the NWO. And you guys had a quote-unquote fake Sting, Jeff Farmer, dress up in Sting's gear. And we had a cliffhanger on a Nitro that made people wonder, hey, is Sting with the NWO? And, of course, we find out at the pay-per-view, no, it was the NWO trying to pull a fast one and confuse other people in WCW. And it wasn't too long before, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? Who's that? It's Sting, but he's not colorful. He's not neon paint. It's black and white, and he's got a leather jacket, and he's sitting in the rafters. Why is the birth of Crow Sting in your top 5, Eric?
Probably for a lot of the same reasons that the DDP moment as La Parka was, because it was, and I think for me, it even goes a little bit earlier than that. I think Sting was doing an interview, he had his back to the camera, and he just dropped some kind of, he foreshadowed what was to come in a way that had people scratching their heads, right? It's like, wait a minute, what did he just, why has he got he's turning his back to us? The people were confused in a great way, right? That was the goal, is to get people going, what the hell is going on with Sting? And then obviously the Crow Sting character began, and as you just talked about, the real genesis of the character itself, because it was so phenomenal, man. I always like to go back to the beginning of anything. It's one of the reasons I talk about, the spider web of life. I'm here right now, but if you really look at the reason why I'm here, you've got to go back to this, which will take you back to that, which will definitely take you back to this. And I love kind of tracking the timeline of great moments and great ideas, because they all start somewhere. And the Sting character, the Crow character, the genesis of that character really started for me, I think, on September 16th, 1996. And it became such, to this day, something that people still talk about. And Steve Borden is still traveling the world signing autographs as Crow Sting. So how do you not look at that moment and go, that was pretty important. That was pretty cool.
It is interesting to think too, because, you take a look at a guy like Hulk Hogan, who certainly had 2 different iconic personas. We know what we're talking about, the red and yellow and then the black and white. Well, Sting kind of had the same thing too. He had the neon colors and then he had the Crow thing. But where we would see Hulk Hogan sort of post wrestling when he's just making public appearances, he could go back and forth. Some days he'd do the yellow and red and other days he'd do the black and white. I find it interesting that Sting has not really done that. He has maintained, with the exception of that one-off at StarCast, and then when his son's dressed up to pay homage to the past and his final match in Greensboro last year, he's maintained the Crow persona the entire time. Like, I know we talk about the importance of the NWO to WCW, but the importance of the NWO to the Sting character can't be overstated because he never went back to neon. He stuck with the Crow look the entire time. It changed his career. He may have been the biggest beneficiary of the NWO. In totality, it may have been Sting.
Man, that's an interesting perspective, and I agree with you on that. If you think about it, again, stepping back, don't get mired in, but if you would have beat Hulk clean and whatever, like, take your armchair quarterback or your armchair booker hat off, just step back and look at it and think about it from a perspective of Sting was originally supposed to be the third man. He didn't get that opportunity, which in some respects was probably a disappointment for Sting, especially given where the NWO eventually landed, and it continues to exist, right? NWO is still one of the top 10 merchandise items in the WWE merchandise catalog to this freaking day. And Sting had the opportunity to be the third man, and he wasn't. But if you look at, as you was pointed out so well, who actually benefited the most as a talent? Arguably Hulk, because it was a second career for him. It was completely reborn as a character and enjoyed a tremendous amount of success as a result. But Sting, I think in many ways benefited even more than Hulk. I mean, Sting's been able to make a lot of money with that Crow Sting character for the last, what's it been now, 25 years?
Yeah.
30 years? Whatever it's been. It's a big benefit. I think it's pretty cool. And it certainly catapulted Sting. Sting was never as popular as a character in WCW as the Surfer Sting character. He was not a fraction as popular in WCW then in terms of scale, people that were watching and supporting, as he was the Crow Sting character. It was a much bigger character for him.
I just think it's so interesting that, the nostalgia is there for almost every wrestling personality. But where Hogan could reach back in his bag of tricks and come back with the red and yellow or the black and white, Sting has maintained the Crow Sting. You got to think it's because it just resonated with fans in a bigger way. I had a conversation with him not too long ago, and he told me that the NWO angle really connected him with a large portion of wrestling fans who maybe were bullied at school or in youth sports or whatever. They could identify with this one guy against this band of bad guys, these rebels, these bullies, because that's what the NWO was. And Sting sort of represented the vigilante who could overcome all of that. So those people who maybe felt they were being picked on or isolated from others or what have you in their real life, maybe that character resonated more. But I definitely feel like it pulled an emotional lever with fans that the Neon Surfer Sting never did.
Yeah, the Neon Surfer Sting was cool. It was exciting. It was colorful. It brought a lot of positive energy. Woo! And all that was fun. It's engaging. The audience could participate in it, right? And that's always really, really freaking important. But I think the psychology, as you laid out so well, the solid psychology behind the character reached the audience at a different level. The audience, theoretically, they're watching because they're living vicariously to one degree or another. They're living vicariously through these larger than life characters that they see on television. Same is true with dramatic series and probably sitcoms at some level. You relate to those characters in some unique way that makes you interested in them, right? Whether you're interested in their sense of humor or their ability to tell a story, their ability to make you feel certain things that you don't feel in the course of your normal day life. The psychology with the Sting character, he was really an anti-hero, right? He was the ultimate good guy that's now willing to pick up a frickin' baseball bat and clear a room because that room deserves to be cleared. That's like an aspirational quality, I think, that most people at least like to believe is deep down within them. Some people probably believe it's right on the surface, and for some people it is. But I think almost everybody wishes they could be that guy that would show up and clear that room of the bullies that deserve to be cleared out. We all want that. We all want to be the hero. Sting was that hero in a relatable way, not in a visually dynamic way.
Isn't it interesting too that the two hottest acts that WCW and the WWF had, and we'll call it 97, 98, were really doing the exact same thing. They were allowing the audience to live vicariously. With Sting, you were able to, that character was going to go take care of the bullies, and he was going to stand up for the little guy, and he wasn't going to be picked on, and he was a vigilante. And on the other channel, who didn't want to live vicariously through Stone Cold Steve Austin and flip their boss off and tell him to kiss your ass and give him a star? Everybody wants to beat their boss up. Everybody wants to beat up bullies. Like, I think it's interesting that wrestling fans in 97, if you had some angst, you could live vicariously on Nitro or USA.
And yeah, both characters, certainly Steve Austin was that blue collar, everyman. He's got to show up to work and take crap from his boss or coworkers. And just said, you know what? Enough of it. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's I've worked a lot of jobs in my life, a lot of construction jobs, physical jobs, landscaping, digging ditches, roofing houses, jobs where it's tough work. And you realize early on that almost every place you work, there's somebody, an immediate supervisor or somewhere up the line that just everybody's kind of like, man, I'd like to get that guy get him out behind the bar one night, just let him know how I really feel. That was Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he did it in a fun way. It was visually fun to watch and live vicariously through.
Kung Fu Stick is with us here live, and they say, Eric, who was the person who could have did the Sting gimmick? Not the Sting gimmick, but the Sting gimmick. The idea being, we've talked about this a lot with The Undertaker. If anyone other than Mark Calloway does that, I think we all agree, it doesn't come off quite as well. Maybe it would have been a 6-week or a 6-month. I don't know that it would have been a 20+ year career. But if someone else were to do this Crow character, I'm not saying Surfer Sting. If Surfer Sting just stays with Steve Borden, if we need someone else to do this vigilante angle, and he's going to don the Crow face paint and put on the black coat and sit in the rafters, is there anybody else that could have pulled it off, or did it have to be Steve Borden?
I think it had to be Steve Borden because, again, you got to go back and kind of remember at least what the general direction of the NWO and WCW was NWO is going to come in, decimate WCW, and then WCW is going to rise from the ashes and regain their position on the throne by taking out the NWO. That was the premise of the long-term story that we had for that. Obviously, it took a lot of twists and turns all the way in between, but that was the general premise. We knew initially that it had to be somebody that the wrestling fans identified most strongly with as a WCW hero. And you had a choice at that time. Arguably, Ric Flair was that guy in the minds of many. But the younger audience, the audience that we really had to kind of draft up and bring up along with us and expand, that was Sting. Your hardcore wrestling fan, your devoted traditional wrestling fan, it was Ric Flair all day long. But the younger wrestling fan, the younger part of our audience, it was definitely Sting. And given the choice between Flair and Sting, I couldn't imagine Ric Flair dressing up like the Crow with a bird on his shoulder, sitting up I certainly couldn't see Ric Flair scaling down on a rope, getting dropped in the middle of the arena. I could see Sting doing it, and it was the right choice. I don't think anybody else could have done that. I mean, physically, could somebody else have done it? Sure. A lot of guys could have done it. Could have been Crow Guerrero, I guess. But here's the reason why I think Sting worked so well. Keep in mind, Sting had been studying acting for a long time. In fact, I executive produced an independent film with Sting called The Real Reason Men Commit Crimes, I think. I was the executive producer of that. I think it aired on TBS or TNT, one or the other. But Sting was really committed to acting. He was learning. He was studying. He was training with acting coaches. And that character, you had to kind of immerse yourself in a character. You didn't have the luxury of the spoken word. There were no interviews to get that character over. There was very little physical contact for a long time in order to get that character over. There were no matches. There were no 2-minute promos, but the character had to grow and build. And I think because Sting understood how to use his body, his presence, his eyes, even though he was in full makeup, he made that character believable. I don't know that any other wrestlers on the roster at that time would have taken the same approach to that character as Steve Borden did because of his passion for acting. And I know people can say, what do you mean acting? You did all you had to do is stand there with a bird. Yeah, try doing that and getting a reaction sometime. It was more than just the outfit and the gimmick and the staging. It was more than that. It was a character that didn't talk, that did very little physically, that connected to that audience in an amazing way. And that's great acting.
Well, you don't have to act with Blue Chew. Guys, now you can enter the room dick first. Blue Chew's not just a tablet, it's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like somebody gave you downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. You know, I've been kicked out of 4 museums for carrying a loaded sculpture. Guys, this isn't about performance. This is about your legacy or your third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. You know, when you lay it down, they're talking about how it gets up. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Go discover your options right now at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code 83weeks at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over right now to BlueChew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
Hold on, everyone here. I've lost my audio. I'm going to let you sit here and talk to my beautiful wife.
We're live here at 83weeks.com. And this is what happens when you go live. But speaking of going live, I saw a great comment just a moment ago. I think it was Michael Collins who pointed this out. And he said that one of his favorite moments in WCW Nitro history, a guilty pleasure favorite moment, a fan nailed Scott Hall in the head with a drink at the perfect moment, right after he said too sweet, and the camera zoomed in on him. Even Eric got splashed. I think everybody watching this remembers that moment where all of a sudden a beverage just slides in. And what does he do? He just takes his 2 hands and slicks his hair back like nothing happened, totally ignored it, kept it moving, cooler than the other side of the pillow. Only Eric Bischoff, the NWO, and Monday Nitro. We're live. We want to hear from you. Jake from the Windy City says the Mall of America doesn't feel lively anymore. Well, maybe we need to get another Monday Nitro up there. Catherine Summers, who's been with us for 14 months here at 83weeks.com, says you sold your reaction well, but inquiring minds want to know, how did you manage keeping Lex's appearance so tight-lipped? Leftover birthday cake is amazing, and turning 48 yesterday has never looked so good. Congratulations on your birthday, Mrs. Summers. Greatly appreciate all your support. I know you've been a day one gal here hanging out with us at 83 weeks, and we greatly appreciate your support, and happy belated birthday. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that he shared that, hey, you got to book your own airfare. You got to book your own hotel room. We don't want it to go through the travel department. We don't want any leaks. Crow Guerrero says, Eric dropped the ball with me. I could have been huge. I love that somebody set up a fake YouTube profile already calling themselves Crow Guerrero. We're visiting Eric's top 5 Nitro moments. As a reminder, number 5 was DDP doing his best La Parka in the middle of the Randy Savage angle. Number 4 was the creation of Crow Sting. But number 3 is one that everybody remembers. This too is 1996. This will be our second 1996. This is from late July, just a couple of weeks after Hulk Hogan has become bad guy at Bash at the Beach. I guess we'll call it the Disney Massacre, where we famously saw Rey Mysterio Jr. used as a lawn dart. But this got so real, Eric, that the actual authorities were called. This had to be a good feeling for you.
It was so exciting. And yeah, to have ambulances and cop cars and a fire truck rushing to the set because people that lived in proximity to Disney MGM Studios that was watching Nitro live on television called 911 because of what they saw happening on live television. Man, if that's not the sweet spot, I've talked before about the sweet spot. What's the sweet spot, you say, Eric? The sweet spot is when you get an audience that knows everything you're doing is scripted, but then you're able to create a scenario, a scene, a moment where they go, yeah, I know this stuff is scripted, but that's not supposed to happen. That's real. That's the sweet spot. And we just nailed that sweet spot. It was awesome.
It was unbelievable, the reaction from the fans, and all these years later. I mean, people are still saying and referencing that lawn dart scenario. We got to touch on number 2. I think a lot of people would argue this could be the number 1, but Scott Hall coming through the crowd, May 27th, 1996. I think this is your birthday. How old did you turn that day, Eric, on May 27th, 1996?
96, I would have been 41.
It's unbelievable to me to think about you at 41 years old, driving Scott Hall to the show in your Porsche. You know, you've got the former Razor Ramon. You've got this idea. Little did we know that it would become the biggest angle in the history of professional wrestling, that it would literally catapult WCW from sucking hind teat in this Monday Night War, or just in the promotional war of, I mean, the WWF had been king for so long. And with this one move, the winds of change were here. It's number 2 on your list, and well-deserved. Scott Hall's a big part of the entire success of Nitro, don't you think?
Without question. You know, in that moment, again, it's, you know, the same thing with the DDP thing, you know, with playing La Parka and, you know, kicking off the Randy Savage angle, or, you know, all of the things we've already talked about. It's like, for me personally, it's like, where did it all begin? What was the moment that changed so much? Because those are the moments that I put so much value in, right? They're not necessarily the most fun moments, but they're the most important ones. And I think when Scott Hall came down through the crowd, never been done before, everybody thought, oh my gosh, this must be real because I've never seen it before. Nobody does this. And if they don't normally do this, then therefore it's not supposed to happen. Therefore it's real. That was the psychology behind that scene. And to see it play out, not knowing then what we've all learned since about how big NWO would become and how it would impact the industry, really. But to go back and look at that moment now, or to relive that moment in my mind, it's pretty freaking awesome, because that was the beginning of so much. That was the beginning of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was the beginning of the Attitude Era. That was the beginning of, you know, everything that you saw in WWE roughly a year later started occurring because of that moment when Scott Hall came down through the crowd and let everybody know that he was here to make a statement. It was awesome.
We're live right now at 83weeks.com. Hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, turn on the notifications bell. But let us know below, what's your top 5 moments in Nitro history? Yesterday was the 30-year anniversary. Eric's breaking his down. Number 5 was DDP doing his best La Parka. That was 1997. In September of 1996, the birth of Crow Sting came in at number 4 for Eric. The Disney Massacre, which led to Rey Mysterio doing his best lawn dart impersonation. That was late July 1996. That's number 3 on Eric's list. Number 2, we just heard, is the debut of Scott Hall coming down through the crowd. But Eric's number 1, top 5 moment in Nitro history, is the Lex Luger debut. Why is this number 1, Eric?
Because it set the tone for Nitro, and Nitro changed. You know, people always say, oh, it's going to change the wrestling business forever. Okay, whatever. Very few things, very few moments, very few ideas, very few decisions actually change the industry. The rest of it is like participation trophies to make people feel good about themselves or each other. This moment, the launch of Nitro, and because of the impact and the buzz that Lex Luger created, absolutely catapulted Nitro. right out of the gate. I talked about it earlier. We came out of the gate competitive. We didn't have to work up to trying to be competitive with WWE. We went from a distant number 2, pretty much where Tony Khan is today, and about the same relative position. We went from that to kicking his ass in less than 12 months. But that initial 12 months, we kick his ass one week, he kick ours the next. We were competitive right out of the chute. And it was because, in many respects, because of that moment that we created, that the wrestling audience told me they wanted. It was born out of research, as we've already described. It wasn't like, oh, I got this great idea. I'm so smart. I'm the most creative wrestling person in the world. No, I just listened to the freaking audience and figured out a way to do it. But that way was Lex Luger. And Lex Luger, because of the situation, again, timing is everything, right? Sometimes it works for you. Sometimes it works against you. Timing was on our side. The audience was telling us what they wanted. It was the key to our success. The situation with Lex Luger was so unbelievably unique in terms of the timing and the opportunity that it created. That moment to me is why it's my number 1 moment, because that moment, in my opinion, changed not only my fortunes, Lex's, everybody in WCW's, but if anybody should be thankful for that moment, it should be any stockholder in WWE, because that's the reason WWE started doing what we were doing, which is targeting that 18 to 49-year-old instead of teens and preteens, going live every week, just like we taught them to do, introducing more reality-based storylines, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mike Tyson, Mr. McMahon. All of that was a result of that moment with Lex Luger, in my not so humble opinion.
We're live here, and we've got a comment from Yes Have Some, who says, the first episode of Nitro was burned in my brain, and I consider it one of the best television pilots of all time, alongside The Sopranos, Lost, and Breaking Bad. I know you have a whole second act after pro wrestling where you just did television, but to hear that your first episode of Nitro, at least in this fan's opinion, is up there with the pilots for The Sopranos and Lost and Breaking Bad, that's got to make you feel good, doesn't it?
Sure. Of course. I'm a human being. I like to hear good shit. I get enough of the bad shit. So every once in a while, yeah, I'll take that all day long and be grateful for it. Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to talk about some more good shit, as you said, because I felt like, man, I could not have a more different list than you, because I don't think I could have a top 5 Nitro moments without mentioning what I'm going to squeeze into your honorable mentions list. Goldberg beating Hulk Hogan at the Georgia Dome for the big gold belt. Like, that felt like the high water mark for me for WCW. Like, I think this is one of those moments where, as a wrestling fan, you remember where you were when it happened. I was at my parents' timeshare at the Landmark in Panama City on Front Beach Road. And Monday Night Raw was a taped Raw where they had DX doing some regrettable cosplay as the Nation of Domination. But you had Goldberg, this unstoppable force that came out of nowhere. We didn't even know his name a year prior. And now he's beating Hulk Hogan in the Georgia Dome in front of what seemed like 100,000 fans. Of course it wasn't, but that's on my list, Eric. And it's got to at least be an honorable mention for you, right?
Oh, of course. And arguably it could be on anybody's number 1. At the list, because it was a huge moment. I think we had like 40,000 people in attendance, and it was huge. And it's like it goes back to the beginning of Nitro. Part of the format, the Nitro format, that changed the wrestling industry legitimately, not as a participation trophy phrase. Arguably, this match and putting it on free TV, which was part of the strength of Nitro. I talked early on with Nitro in the format. We're going to bring matches and angles that you typically wouldn't see on real television. We're going to bring that pay-per-view quality content to weekly television. And a lot of the people, a lot of the dirt sheet writers at the time was like, oh, he's going to kill the business. This is going to be horrible. The pay-per-view business is going to die if they're putting all these big matchups on free TV. All of the geniuses who've convinced themselves and others that they understood the wrestling business because they quote unquote studied it. All of them said that it was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Well, here we are years later, after dominating the WWE with a formula that everybody said was going to fail, to take it to the next step and put arguably, in fact, a lot of people were so critical of it. How could you possibly give this away on free TV? And I reminded everybody, because Ted Turner said we were in a television business, not in the pay-per-view business. That's why. Freaking knuckleheads. It's not hard to figure out. You just do what your boss tells you to do. Keep your job, make some money. It's how the world turns. And that's what this match was. It was absolutely pay-per-view quality in the minds of probably the majority of wrestling fans. Absolutely should have been a pay-per-view. In fact, some people say that's the beginning of the downfall of WCW. Like, what the fuck? But yeah, that was a very cool moment and arguably number one in a lot of people's minds.
I feel like Lex Luger is perhaps criminally underrated when you think about magical moments, because you have as your number one Lex Luger's debut, switching teams. He was in the WWF doing a house show on Sunday night. On Monday night, here he is at the Mall of America challenging Hulk Hogan. But it was when he beat Hulk Hogan on Nitro 100, the first ever 3-hour Nitro from the Palace of Auburn Hills, the same building where years prior he was supposed to win the world title at SummerSlam from Yokozuna. He's unsuccessful. And I think everybody thought for sure, based on the Lex Express, well, he's definitely going to win the world title. It didn't happen for him. But it does a few years later when he does the unthinkable. He beat Hollywood Hulk Hogan. How in the world is this even possible? That is definitely on my honorable mention list. I mean, just the reaction from the crowd alone, I think it's got to be on the list of biggest pops in WCW history. But then even the backstage celebration after, where you see Rey Mysterio, Lex, and others trying to furiously scrub that NWO spray paint off the world title. This has to be on the honorable mentions list, doesn't it?
Oh, it's such a cool moment. And again, because of the way my mind works, I'm always looking to go back to the genesis of things and where it all began. To me, that's the most fascinating. Without question, in terms of a big moment, Goldberg Hogan, obviously, this right there with it for different reasons, but this moment's right there with the Hogan Goldberg matchup and Goldberg beating Hogan.
We're gonna have a little fun with this last one because this is my list. I got to come up with the honorable mentions for your top 5, and we want to hear what are your top 5 moments. The honorable mentions so far that I've brought up are Hogan beating Goldberg for the title and Luger beating Hogan for the title, but Hogan's not involved in my last one. It was Ric Flair's return to WCW television in the fall of '98. He comes out and they recreate the Horseman and announce that he's back, and it leads to a fiery confrontation with you on camera. And people who'd been reading the Observer and the Torch and calling the hotlines, they knew that there was a back and forth. It led to the iconic "Fire me, I'm already fired." I mean, just a great moment on WCW television. The reaction from the fans that night in Greenville, I mean, it was a pretty special moment. That makes my list of honorable mentions. Would this be on your list as well?
Nah. I mean, it was a cool moment, and if you're a Ric Flair fan especially, absolutely one of his highlights. I thought it was excellent television, but I don't know if I'd put it in there with your other 2 honorable mentions. It wasn't quite that impactful, but certainly a great moment. I enjoyed it. It was fun for me. I got to go out there and work with Ric Flair. Like, if you can't have fun working with Ric Flair, you're in the wrong business. So for that aspect, I really dug it, but I don't know if it had as much impact on me as maybe it did on others.
Well, it was a fantastic moment as a fan who was keeping up with some of the behind the scenes, because I think as wrestling fans, we all want to suspend our disbelief. We want to be able to point to things and say, well, listen, I know what the show is, but now that was real. That felt real. It felt like,
well, it mostly was real.
Yes.
That's the sweet part. And I guess I should be looking at this a little differently in terms of significant moments, because it was another example of the formula that made Nitro successful, which was the reality-based television. When I talk about that and I reference reality-based television, it probably means different things to different people. But for me, it's taking real-life scenarios that people are aware of, modifying them somewhat playing with him a little bit, getting a little creative with him, and bringing those real life issues into a scripted environment and doing so and keeping it believable. This was a great example of that. You know, one of the challenges, I mean, anybody that knows Ric Flair knows he wears his emotions on his sleeve.
Yes.
It's not going to be hard to figure out what Ric Flair's thinking at any given minute, right? That can be challenging at times, but can also be a real gift. And in this case, from a television producer's point of view and a talent's point of view, in my case, working with Rick, same reason I used to like to work with Steve Austin, because it came so easy. Because Steve Austin could make you believe it was real. Mick Foley could make you believe it was real when he wanted to. Ric Flair could make you believe it was real. And in this scenario, with this backstory, which was very real, and because Rick did wear his emotions on his sleeve, that intensity, his seemingly portrayed hatred of me, that was not acting. That was Rick wearing his emotions on his sleeves and just letting me have it, but within the structure of a story that had a payoff. That's kind of magical. When you can get it, it's magic. It can go wrong too. It can go real shitty real fast in the right or / wrong situation. But in this case with Rick, it was pretty freaking awesome.
It was awesome, and we want to hear from you guys. What makes your top 5 moments in Nitro history? And I want you to be thinking about next week too, because we're going to be breaking down the top 5 matches in Nitro history. So hit us with some of those suggestions in the comments. I want to talk a little bit about John Cena, because we've got some news that I want to cover with you. We've actually got a follow-up that I know is going to get a lot of people's attention from last week. And some of the comments from our live chat are backing up. We're going to get to all those. But first, I need to brag about our partners at Delete Me. You see, Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. You see, data brokers make a profit off of your data. Your data, whether you know this or not, is a commodity. And anyone on the web can buy your private details. Now, that can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, even harassment. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. Now, what do these data brokers do? Well, your name, your contact info, your social security number, your home address, even information about your family members could be compiled by data brokers and sold online. And I want you to take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. We've got a special discount for our listeners, but before I tell you about that, I want to remind you how real this circumstance is. I think everybody knows on this show and on social media, I'm Conrad the mortgage guy, because my day job is helping people realize their dream of home ownership. And imagine how tough it is when I have to give someone the bad news that, I'm sorry, I think your identity may have been stolen because someone's been racking up debt and you didn't disclose any of this to me. So I don't know that you have this information. And the look on those people's faces when they were coming into my office all excited about buying a house, and now they realize their dream is delayed at least because of something they weren't even involved with. That's what's at stake here. That's why this is important. Take control of your life and get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go right now to joindeleteme.com/83weeks and use the promo code 83weeks at checkout. That's the only way you'll get 20% off, is to go to joindeleteme.com/83weeks and enter the code 83weeks at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/83weeks, and the code is 83weeks. Eric, we want to hit some of these live questions that we've had coming in. We'll try to hit some of these as quickly as we can, because I do want to talk to you about John Cena. Ash111 says, hey, Eric, I'm a huge fan. I wonder if Brian Pillman didn't get injured or pass away. Would he have been a big star in WCW if you re-signed him? So if the cards landed differently and he wound up in WCW, could you have made money with Brian Pillman in WCW?
Well, clearly. And we'd established that with the story and the angle and the character that Brian developed with Kevin Sullivan, capped off with the Booker Man, comments in the corner. But no, I mean, the whole loose cannon thing that started in WCW, could have easily carried forward because it was so unpredictable. You could take it in any direction at any time. And Brian was so good at that character because he was basically half batshit crazy at the time.
We've got another great question here. This one is really more of a comment from Jeff Moreland. He says, "Thank you for everything you've done for the industry. I'm a huge fan of you and you are amazing. It's also so good to see how much of a true friend you were to Hulk. I miss Nitro." Eric, if you had a time machine, would you want to do one more Nitro? Could it be fun to do one more just for nostalgia's sake?
Nah. I mean, I'm so grateful for it. It changed my life, changed my family's life, changed a lot of people's lives. In many respects, it changed WWE's fortune in lives. But sometimes it's really cool just to look back and be grateful for it, as opposed to really wanting to do it one more time. I'm real cool with where I'm at, man. I'm real cool with what I experienced. Grateful for it, but I don't think I'd want to do it again.
Frank says, "Hey, Eric, do you have a favorite WCW Hulk Hogan moment or yourself with Hogan?" So what about your favorite moment that you shared? We'll call it on screen with Hulk Hogan, because so many times you were synonymous. I mean, you're coming out with him pretending like you're flying a plane and he's playing air guitar and you're holding the mic for him. Was there one moment when you think back and you just, maybe it was nonverbal, but you looked at him and he looked at you and you guys were like, man, this is as good as it gets right here?
Oh, there were so many. I'm trying to isolate just one of them, but a lot of it was real subtle stuff. It wasn't, a big wrestling type moment that the audience would even recognize, but there were so many. I think when I was revealed as part of the NWO, that was pretty freaking cool. That was a moment. But really, most of when I think about Hulk and the things that I'm most grateful for, as you were leading up to finish that question, I wasn't sure how you were going to finish it. For me, there's only really very few moments with regard to Hulk and I that I remember that really stood out, because there's so many of them that did, but there's one that really stood out, and it was a conversation. There were no cameras. It was a conversation we had in the back of a limo. I think I probably referenced this on the show. We were on our way to the building in Detroit, probably 97, maybe early 98, and everything was going great. We were kicking WWE's ass. We were making more money than anybody expected we could or would, including me. We're beating our own projections from the year before by a significant margin. And I remember Hulk saying something, I'm paraphrasing it, saying something to me that sounded like, enjoy this moment, but don't think you're going to be here forever, because things can change fast. And it was really putting me in check. Maybe he probably felt I was getting a little too full of myself, which is probably true. And he just kind of like, Father Time, the voice of experience, just settled me down, and he did it in such a meaningful way, not admonishing me, not like, making me feel less than, just that voice of experience saying, don't get too comfortable. It's the entertainment business, kid.
Good advice. SL Raider wants to know, was Rude friendly backstage the night he came back? We've touched on this before, that, you weren't necessarily cross, but I don't think you guys were best of friends when he was in WCW the first go around. But when he comes back in the shadows of the Montreal Screwjob, you just pick up right where you left off as far as being a professional, or did you have to clear the air of some sort?
There was no, look, Rick Rude and I were friends when I first got to WCW. He was a Minneapolis guy, right? We had a lot of mutual friends, a lot of things in common, a lot of mutual friends in common. So Rick and I hit it off right off the bat. I used to drive to buildings with Rick occasionally to produce TV. So there were no issues there. Now, it became contentious towards the end of Rick's life because Rick really wanted to get back into the ring. We were hot could be. Rick knew that. Rick knew it was a great opportunity for him, but Rick got himself backed into a corner with a Lloyd's of London policy. And Rick was able to cash in on that Lloyd's of London policy. But here is the catch. if Rick would have stepped into the ring again, Lloyd's of London would come back after Rick for the payoff that he received, which was substantial. Rick wanted WCW to pay that. I couldn't make that happen. I couldn't go to my bosses and say, look, here's what happened. Rick got injured. He had a Lloyd's of London policy, and the Lloyd's of London policy paid him off this amount of money. We're talking mid to high six figures. And we want to get Rick Rude back in the ring again. But before I can do that, Mr. Turner Finance, or in this case, Miss Turner Finance, I need WCW to pay off Lloyd's of London. And then we got to pay Rick Rude. That wasn't going to happen. And I tried my best to convince Rick that I couldn't do it, but I think Rick, in his mind, believed he wanted it so badly. And in his mind, well, if he's got enough money for this guy and he's got enough money for this guy, surely I'm worth paying off my Lloyd's of London policy. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he was thinking. And that's what he was angry about, that I couldn't, in his mind, wouldn't pay that policy off. So yeah, he was angry at me. I'm sure he, shared that with a lot of different people. But there was nothing I could do about it. But up until that point, Rick and I were always good friends. There was no making up for anything.
Avalon D is with us, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this question, but I do think you should address it. He says, hi, Eric. Warrior's on record saying the reason his match with Hogan was bad at Halloween Havoc was because Hogan didn't want to plan anything. Had the match been great, would Warrior have been kept in WCW? And did WCW have dark matches? So start with the last one first. You guys had dark matches, right?
Yeah, that's where we found Bill Goldberg. But we found the Bill Goldberg character because of dark matches. Bill Goldberg would come out and nobody ever heard of him before. We didn't even know what we were going to call him. We just want to see him. What happens when he wrestles in front of people? We know he can do some shit in the power plant. Cool. What happens when he gets out in front of people? That's always an unknown until you see it. And we put him out there completely unknown, no promotion, no hype, no nothing. He walked out and place popped. Ooh, wait a minute. We got something going on here. A couple more dark matches, and we can't wait. Forget the fact that he only knows 3 moves. We can make that work. And that's exactly what we did. So, yeah, we had dark matches. I don't want to spend too many calories responding to the comments of someone that's no longer here to defend themselves.
Right.
So I'm going to just suggest that was probably frustration, resentment, anger, disappointment, but it had nothing to do with facts. The facts as it related to Warrior and his experience in WCW, well, let's put it this way. We had a plan going into his first interview. How'd that plan go?
Yeah.
I guarantee you it wasn't a plan for a 24-minute promo. Yeah. To work through 2 commercial breaks. I can assure you that was not part of the plan. So I think that was probably unfair for Warrior to suggest, but he saw it from a different angle, so who knows?
I'm sure he saw it from, hey, when you tried to make me back in 1990, we spent forever working on the match down in Tampa, Pat Patterson's, and maybe 8 years later, Hogan thought, well, he's probably got it figured out now, and maybe he didn't, but we'll move on because I do want to talk about John Cena because we've got some kind of big news from John Cena. But before we talk about that, I want to mention that life happens fast. 1 minute you're driving home after work and the next, man, you see flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips, your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds. Not hours, not days, but right when you need it. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a traffic ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. Now, this isn't a call center. This isn't a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, and who can step in right away. Think about it. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone? Or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind that Legal Buddy gives you. And here's how easy it is. Just download the Legal Buddy app at legalbuddyapp.com Register today and use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen, tickets happen, mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. So, Eric, we've been talking about John Cena. He's winding it down. He's had a phenomenal career. We talked about the Clash in Paris, his match with Logan Paul, and I think a lot of people are realizing now there's 8 scheduled appearances left for John Cena. He's going to do SmackDown later tonight in Chicago, and it's been confirmed this is, in fact, his last SmackDown. And, of course, we all recall back in 2002 when he did his Ruthless Aggression angle with Kurt Angle and really made his television debut in a big way. It was in Chicago. Well, he's back there tonight. 10 days from now, he'll be doing Raw in Springfield on September 15th. 5 days after that, probably the one everybody's got circled right now, it's WrestlePalooza in Indianapolis, the first show on ESPN. It's going to be a gigantic affair, allegedly him and Brock Lesnar. Crown Jewel will get him a few weeks later in Perth, October 11th. And it was announced earlier today that on November 10th, John Cena will have his last appearance in Boston. I think most people assumed that his last match would be in Boston. That's certainly the rumor and innuendo that we heard earlier in the year, or at least that's what the speculation was. The following week, John Cena will say farewell to New York. His last appearance there will be on Monday Night Raw on Netflix on November 17th. And he'll make his last San Diego appearance, his last Survivor Series appearance on November 29th for War Games. But Saturday night's main event on December 13th has not officially been announced. And it led to a lot of speculation of where will John Cena's last match be. And there was an interview that he did earlier this year in the UK where he said he's famous for not picking his opponents. We'll come back to that in a moment. But he would like to advocate for London to get a WrestleMania. And he said, I know when I say that, people just assume that I'm trying to say what people want to hear for the show. But he would be fine with having his last match in London because those fans are rabid John Cena fans. I thought that was maybe a clue that maybe we're going to see Saturday night's main event from London. And then I thought, well, hang on. If we're paying an homage and we want it to be a star-studded affair, because he is a Hollywood actor now, maybe we'll do it in L.A., the site of where he won his first world title at WrestleMania 21, beating JBL to become the world champ. It makes sense. Hey, that's where we kicked off the first SmackDown on Fox. Maybe we'll have John Cena say farewell from Los Angeles. But friend of the show, John Alba, has reported today that WWE took bids on John Cena's last match. Like this was a premium live event. And the town that everyone assumed was going to land it, Boston, was outbid by Washington, D.C. And now there's all kinds of speculation. Is the president going to be at John Cena's last match? Like, this is a crazy idea. And I know that the UFC has suggested, and I guess they're actually trying to facilitate a UFC on the White House lawn next year. What do you make of this? Do you think we'll see John Cena's last match in Washington, D.C.? Is this real?
I hope so. I hope that that's the case. I think it'd be very, very cool. Look, you know, politics aside, because I know how people are just batshit crazy now, and families are, you know, splitting over this, friendships dissolve because of politics. I'm just not into it at that level. I don't get it. It's bizarre mental behavior for me to watch and listen to. But John Cena's kind of like apple pie to me, man. He's America. This is an American sport. Professional wrestling as we know it, yes, it exists all over the world, but it is inherently an American genre that was created here and grew here and has influenced everyone else around the world, this unique sports entertainment style of wrestling. And I think John, as much as anybody, represents America. So I hope so. And I hope President Trump gets involved. I hope so, because WWE and professional wrestling sports entertainment as we know it is so profoundly American that I couldn't think of a better place for it.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out. Also fascinating is, well, what showed up last week is our YouTube comment of the week. We are indeed live, and we want to hear from you guys, including Matthew DeCox, who says, I love this show. Hey, man, we love you for hanging out with us live here. And we're looking for those comments. Last week, when we were speaking of John Cena, we discussed claims by Jake Hager about John Cena, allegedly not putting over talent. Well, friend of the show, former WWE superstar Matt Morgan, took to YouTube and commented on our clip. He says, hey, guys, it's Matt Morgan again. I can 1,000% vouch that John Cena has at least 10 different times told the company he's not putting certain talent over the years. That's his prerogative to do once he became the megastar he became. But for Eric to act like John was allergic to that is insane. There's a reason top guys stay top guys. And a big part of that is refusing to put over and commerce that the fans are starting to change, start rooting for, i.e. Zack Ryder, Jack Swagger at the time, Alberto Del Rio at the time. Please tell me who John Cena put over, Eric, from the years 2004 to 2012. She wouldn't even allow NXT as an entire group and stable to beat his ass down, where Wade Barrett would have came out as the world champion eventually. It was the hottest story in the company in the last 5 years when it started, and he still said no. I'm not knocking them for it, but I think Eric doesn't understand any of this because he was not watching wrestling at the time in his defense. But that's where Roman Reigns came up with the Golden Shovel promo. It was 100% to say it. Next up, Eric, please name any WWE agent on God's green earth that would actually pull Jack Swagger aside and say, I'm not supposed to tell you this, brother, but Sooner doesn't want to do the job for you. He means Cena. LMFAO, said no WWE agent of all time, LOL. They would be fired the next day. They know that they get in where they fit in. None of them in 1 million years would cross John Cena as agents. None of them, not one. He was their money train at the time. Why would they do that, Eric? For Jack Swagger, hashtag, come on, son. So first of all, shout out to Matt Morgan for watching the show and commenting. I appreciate that. But boy, it feels like he's got the inside track on wrestling politics. This isn't something we've heard other people in wrestling say outside of perhaps Ryback. And I guess now Jack Swagger. But we're starting to hear people come out and say these sort of things. Do you take this with a grain of salt? Is it a blind spot for you, or is it sour grapes? What say you?
So it's not a blind spot for me. I just have a different perspective on life and the way it really works than perhaps Matt Morgan does. And I like Matt. We're friends, but he wrote it, so fuck it. Here you go. Name me, Matt, one top star in the last 20 years in either WCW or WWE who doesn't get to voice an opinion about who they work with and the storyline. People like to often talk about guarantee contracts and creative control. One person had creative control, Hulk Hogan. A couple of guys had right to meaningful consultation, which in the real world doesn't mean anything. In a court of law, for me to be able to satisfy a meaningful consultation claim is pretty freaking easy. Doesn't mean we have a meaningful conversation and I have to agree with you, right? There was only one person who had creative control, and he only used it one time. But effectually, Rock, John Cena, Steve Austin, he didn't like it. He walked away. Literally walked away. Left Vince McMahon holding the bag. Name any other world champion at the time. You think The Undertaker hasn't had conversations? Brock Lesnar? MJF? Name anybody in AEW who doesn't get to vote on who they work with. Let's be really honest about it. Creative control and people, just because John, and I'm not defending John Cena, I wasn't in those agent meetings. And I agree with Matt to the extent that if you're an agent, you're not going to pull talent aside and give them not inside information. You're not going to share management's perspective that isn't meant to be shared with the talent. You're not going to do that because you would be fired the next day. And by the way, you should be fired the next day because now you're playing politics. Now you're trying to grease your own skids. Now you're trying to put yourself in a favorable position with the talent and fade the heat to somebody else because you're a chicken shit. There's no chicken shit agents in WWE. That I can assure you. And I'm not even there, but I know how it works. But to suggest from Matt's, at least the way I interpreted that, what you read to me, that John Cena was some kind of control freak and had power over people and exercised it. Sure he did. Just like anybody else that's ever been in his position. You're the top star. You get to vote, whether your contract says so or not. And guess what? You vote by having a conversation. I'm sure Vince McMahon and John Cena had many conversations about finishes and opponents. And if John felt like he could get somebody over and it was from a business perspective, added value for WWE going forward, that would be one conversation. But if he didn't feel it, didn't see it, didn't think he could make it work, that's a different conversation. Doesn't mean that he was imposing his will and forcing his way of life and his way of doing business on everybody else around him, like he's some kind of evil character. John was doing what anybody in the business before him and since then has been doing, which is voicing his opinion and getting a vote, whether he had a contract that says he could or not.
We want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Is Matt Morgan on to something, or do you side with Eric? Don't forget, we're going to be highlighting those YouTube comments of the week. Our rapid fire, want to acknowledge some of the other live questions that have come in. Michael Scoggins says, congrats. What are must-dos when you're promoting and gaining interest for an event or fundraiser? You got any promotional tips you can give real quick, Eric?
I mean, if it's a local event, man, tie into whatever local causes, groups, support, people that have a similar vested interest. Just take advantage of the local market. You know, you can advertise as much as you want, but it always does come down to grassroots and getting the local interests involved. So, you know, whether it's a charity, whatever it may be, engage, share, you know, tie people in to benefit one way or the other from your success and get as many people working for your cause as you can.
Best Wrestling Cameos says, would the NWO have bounced back if COVID hit in 97? Now, that's a weird alternative universe question. Like, you know, it was based on heat. If there's no fans there, boy, that would have been challenging in any era, right?
Of course, everything was challenging. I mean, television generally sucked. Live television sucked back then. So, yeah, it would have been a challenge. I don't know how I don't know what I would have done. I don't have an alternative plan. It's such a bizarro world hypothetical that I'll have to spend a day thinking about that one.
Cell Raider says, would you go on Stephanie or Demolition's podcasts? Have you seen the Stephanie podcast controversy this past week?
No.
She had Shark VPN as a sponsor, and she basically read copy that said something like, are you still watching WWE the old-fashioned way where you have to sit through boring commercials? And then she continued to copy. But I'm like, wait a minute, what? Anyway, you didn't see it. I want to ask you to comment on it. Would you consider going on Stephanie's podcast? If she asked you to go on that show, right?
I like Stephanie. I've always liked Stephanie from the first day I met her. I liked her. I have a ton of respect for her. She's a fun person to be around. And, you know, she's fun to work with. I had a great time working with her.
Did you hear over the weekend or this past week that they're bringing back Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon starting tomorrow?
I did hear that. That's awesome.
It is cool. Tank 1562. Damn you, Tank. Boy, did you call the under 500K AEW rating or what? I saw you taking some victory laps on this online, Eric. I'll give you the floor if you want to say anything.
Look, I wish AEW and Tony well. I got no issues. I could care less. I can't even describe to you how irrelevant anything that has to do with AEW really is to me. But I do like screwing with their ridiculously stupid, willfully ignorant fan base who just absolutely collapse and overreact to anything that is said about AEW. They are the lowest of low. They're the low-hanging fruit that's so low-hanging to the ground, the fruit's starting to rot on the vine. That's the typical online AEW fan base. And collectively, the dumbest group of people I think I've ever been exposed to, right? So it's fun to tweak them because they're so easily tweaked. And at the head of that, group of rotten, low-hanging fruit is your buddy Dave Meltzer, who is proving himself on a daily basis to be the single most out-of-touch person to talk about, write about, or watch professional wrestling. I have never met anybody so out of touch with the mainstream as Dave Meltzer. But now it's becoming evident to everybody. So what was it, about a year ago, 8 months ago, I was sitting down and there was this debate about ratings and network deals and what the AEW could be doing in the future. And I sat down with a glass of wine and I looked at the last 2 years or the previous 2 years of ratings for AEW, and it's simple math. If I can do it, it's pretty simple math. I had a little, $8 calculator and a glass of cheap red wine. I went and punched in a couple numbers. And well, they're losing an average of about 23% of their audience every year. Here's where and Dave, this is for a guy who studies so fucking much. You should just figure this part out. It's a simple math equation. I took their existing audience, averaged it out over whatever it was, 3 or 4 months. Said, okay, that's my baseline of what AEW is currently doing. Now, I went back and looked, and they've been losing about an average of 22 or 23%, whatever it was at the time. So I just did the simple math, Dave. You don't have to study. You just have to actually do shit. And I did the math, and I went, oh, well, this is where they are now. This is where they're going to be a year from now. This is where they're going to be 3 years from now, unless they reverse the 20% average attrition per year. And I came up and I said, by the end of their existing contract, they're going to be hovering around 300,000 viewers. But I projected on November 14th, 2024, I said a year from now, they're going to be, they, meaning AEW, will be hovering around 500,000 viewers. And I was absolutely right. Once again, any moron can sit back and watch something that has already happened and then give you their out of touch, inverted logic perspective on anything. It doesn't take any particular talent, clearly in the case of Dave Meltzer. But who can look at the present and predict the future with a precision and prescience that I can? The answer is nobody. Nobody that's writing about, talking about professional wrestling today can tell you not only what's going to happen, but tell you why it's going to happen. And just to make it a little sweeter, tell you when it's going to happen. You're only going to get that here on 83 weeks. There's nobody else out there, folks. Nobody. You may hate it. And you AEW low-hanging, rotten fruit fanboys may cry. It may ruin your freaking day, but here's why. I'm going to tell you why.
Oh, no.
Because it's the truth. And the truth is so painful to people like Dave Meltzer and the sycophants that, for whatever bizarro reason, listen to him or think that he has any idea what the wrestling industry is really all about. Those are the people that I like to tweak. not Tony. Tony's doing the best he can. Tony's living his dream. If I had access to a couple $1 billion, I'd be chasing and doing some silly stuff too that made no sense to anybody else, but I wouldn't care. I'd just be going out and having fun, whatever that was. And that's what Tony's doing. So God bless Tony and his father for allowing him to do it, because it's a gift. But man, tweaking those wrestling fans, those people that have emotional breakdowns by making a simple comment, that's fun. And I was stuck on a plane. I flew from New York City to Seattle. I got a 20-minute layover in Chicago. But when you're on a plane for 6 hours, I'm not watching another John Wick movie. I'm just not. I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna entertain myself. And what better way than to tweak AEW fanboys, because there's a bizarre group of people, and it's fun to mess with them.
Well, it's fun to help people save money too, and that's exactly what we just did for our man McIntyre. He's a listener of ours, a plumber from Myrtle Beach. He had a baby on the way and had some new expenses. Rather than going and taking out a new loan, he came to us. We showed him how to use the equity he built up in his place to purchase that new car, knock out some credit card debt, skip a couple of house payments. He's saving more than $1,000 a month, and you can do it too right now at savewitheric.com. Let Eric Bischoff, that's right, Eric Bischoff and his team run the numbers for you right now for free. There's no cost, there's no obligation, and if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. And it costs nothing to look. So what are you waiting for? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewitheric.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewitheric.com. Eric, we've got one more comment here. We're celebrating 30 years of Nitro. Instagram Who Wrestling, a story, and always bringing the good questions. And he wants to know, Eric, when it's all said and done, what was your favorite venue for Nitro? Of course, you had the Club La Vila Nitros. You had the Mall in America Nitros. You had outdoor at Disney. You had the Georgia Dome. You had the Palace of Auburn Hills. There were lots of really cool locations and moments for Nitro, but is there one venue that stands out as your favorite?
Chicago. Allstate Arena. It was, I don't know what it's called now, but it was called Allstate Arena back then. Just the energy. It was a perfect size venue. It was big enough that you could put a meaningful crowd in there, but the acoustics in that venue, the way the venue was designed, the camera shots you could get out of there, the energy that came from that building, it was my favorite. That and just for personal reasons, I love San Francisco, the Cow Palace. That was a cool building. That building spoke to me for some reason. In fact, that building, I always wanted to do a tabletop book, mostly photography, but it's a story. And I even came up with a title for it, These Walls Can Talk. Because if you look at the history of some of those buildings, now, unfortunately, some of them are going away, but you look at the history of some of those buildings and the performers, the moments that occurred in those buildings, and what it meant to the audience at that particular time. There's so much history in those buildings that I wanted to do a tabletop book that would really dive into the stories of each one of those iconic buildings, Cow Palace being one of them, that really, was the initial thought as to, man, that would be a really cool book, because there's so many other buildings, and they're not necessarily always big buildings. There's a lot of little venues around the country that have so much history in them. It would be a great documentary to do as well. But yeah, I would say Allstate Arena as far as really producing great television, but Cow Palace in San Francisco just because of the history.
We want to hear from you guys. What was your favorite Nitro venue, and what are your favorite wrestling venues? WWE's in one later tonight for SmackDown. It's the Allstate Arena. It's John Cena's farewell. I'm sure we'll be talking about it next week here on the program. We're also going to be talking about your top 5 favorite matches from Nitro. We'll hear from Eric, his favorite 5, but what were your favorite 5? Let us know in the comment below, and stay tuned. We'll be back next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff.